Hey everyone, Linus here. Today we're diving into the world of DNS, or the domain name system. Think of it as the internet's very own phone book. Just like you'd look up a friend's name to find their number, your computer uses DNS to find websites. You see, every device on the internet needs an address to communicate, and these addresses are called IP addresses. But remembering a bunch of numbers like 192.168.1.1 is a pain. That's where DNS swoops in to save the day. It translates those complicated IP addresses into easy-to-remember domain names like google.com. Without DNS, browsing the web would be a nightmare. Imagine having to memorize the IP address of every website you wanted to visit. Thankfully, DNS does all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, making our online lives a whole lot smoother. So what exactly is a domain name? It's basically the human-readable address of a website. Take linustechtips.com, for example. That's our domain name, and it's way easier to remember than a string of numbers. Domain names are made up of different parts separated by dots. The last part, like .com or .org, is called the top-level domain, or TLD. It gives you a general idea of what the website is about. For example, .com is for commercial websites, while .org is for organizations. Before the TLD comes the second-level domain, which is the unique part of your website's name. In our case, it's Linus Tech Tips. So when you type in linustechtips.com, you're telling the internet to find the website with that specific name. Now let's talk about IP addresses. As I mentioned earlier, every device on the internet needs an IP address to communicate. Think of it like your home address, but for your computer or phone. IP addresses are made up of a series of numbers separated by dots. There are two main types of IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 addresses look something like 192.168.1.1, while IPv6 addresses are longer and use hexadecimal characters like 2001:0DB8:080:8A3:0:0:8A2E:037:0:7334. While we use domain names to access websites, our computers actually use IP addresses behind the scenes. When you type in a domain name, your computer contacts a DNS server to translate that name into the corresponding IP address. Section 4. DNS servers, the middlemen. DNS servers are like the internet's phone books. They store a massive database of domain names and their corresponding IP addresses. When your computer needs to find a website, it sends a request to a DNS server. There are different types of DNS servers, each with a specific role. For example, there are root servers, TLD servers, and authoritative servers. These servers work together in a hierarchical structure to ensure that your computer gets the correct IP address for the domain name you entered. When you send a DNS request, it first goes to a recursive resolver, which is usually provided by your Internet Service Provider, or ISP. This resolver then queries the different types of DNS servers until it finds the authoritative server for the domain name you're looking for. Section 5. DNS resolution, finding the right website. The process of translating a domain name into an IP address is called DNS resolution. Let's say you want to visit linustechtips.com. Here's a simplified explanation of how DNS resolution works. First, you type linustechtips.com into your web browser. Then, your computer sends a DNS request to your ISP's recursive resolver. The resolver queries the root servers, which point it to the .com TLD server. The TLD server points the resolver to the authoritative server for linustechtips.com. The authoritative server provides the IP address for linustechtips.com. The resolver sends the IP address back to your computer. Finally, your computer uses the IP address to connect to the linustechtips.com web server, and that's it. DNS resolution happens in milliseconds, so you don't even notice it happening. It's a crucial part of how the internet works, allowing us to access websites using easy-to-remember names instead of complicated IP addresses.